are listening to part 59 of our series, Seven Medicines, The Wise Woman Way with Susun Wade at Time Monk Radio. Hello, Susun. Welcome back to Time Monk Radio.
Thank you, Gemini. Am I, like kind of out to lunch here with how freaked out I am about what's going on with sedative drugs?
I don't think so. I find it amazing myself that so many people use over-the-counter when there's so many wonderful herbs to assist us with sleeping.
And, defining long-term use is more than 120 days. When I think of the people that I know who've taken Valium or Xanax and who, take it for long periods of time, just to mention two of those drugs, I also realized that I didn't mention this other kind of curious loop. And I mentioned before that there's a book called Drug Muggers, which is put out by Rodale Press, and it's written by Susie Cohen. I'll tell you truthfully, I find the book desperately difficult to use because rather than giving me like a class of drugs like barbiturates or benzodiazepines, and telling me what nutrients those drugs are going to mug, in her words, she gives me the nutrient and then a list of drugs that take away that nutrient. So it's difficult to use, but I'll make it easy for you. The sedative drugs that we're talking about, all these classes of sedative drugs, basically mug or make ineffective in your body B vitamins, vitamin C, and vitamin D. Now, what do we know about these vitamins? Well, B vitamins, of course, are the vitamins of tranquility, right? How many times was I standing there in the health food store and someone would come in and say, I need a B supplement because I'm under all of this stress and tension. So this is kind of like, imprinted in our brains that the B vitamins calm us down. The B vitamins help us deal with stress. The B vitamins help the nervous system. And the drugs, the sedative drugs that we're taking because we can't go to sleep and because we're anxious, are destroying B vitamins in our body. It's the very thing that we need in order to be calm. No wonder these drugs are addictive. And similarly, vitamin D. We think of vitamin D as a wonderful drug that helps to prevent cancer, but vitamin D is a drug that's made from sunshine. And I think vitamin D is an antidepressant drug, or antidepressant vitamin, that when we have adequate amounts of vitamin D, that our mood is better. I'm not talking about clinical evidence here. I'm talking about what I see with people. And so once again, we have a whole class of sedative drugs which are interfering with our body's ability to make and utilize vitamin D. I'm not so worried about vitamin C. All of us pretty much know that we need to get vitamin C on a daily basis anyhow. But what most people don't know is you hardly need any vitamin C. If you're a healthy adult, 60 milligrams of vitamin C a day is plenty. If you're taking one of these sedative drugs or you're smoking or doing something else that isn't so healthy, double that to 120 milligrams. That's still a tiny amount of vitamin C, easily gotten by eating an orange, drinking a glass of grapefruit juice, eating an apple, eating a salad, many, many ways to get your vitamin C. So, okay, these drugs take it away. Well, almost everything interferes with it. There was a wonderful article that's available by Christopher Hobbs called Herbs and Natural Remedies for Insomnia. There's certainly a lot of things that we can find out on the internet, and a lot of people talking to us about what we should use. I frankly found some of those discussions out on the internet hair-raising. Just because an herb is a plant does not mean that it's necessarily safe. I don't want you to think that there's unsafe sedative drugs and safe herbs. It's not true. And I was kind of getting at that last week when I talked about those narcotic herbs that can be used to help induce sleep and said, I wouldn't go anywhere near the narcotic herbs. I'm not going to talk about or use datura or opium or belladonna. No. So there are, as we started out the month saying, hundreds of plants that are considered sedative, soporific, hypnotic, narcotic, calmative, anti-anxiety, nervine. We have many different classifications for them. and some of them are safer and milder than others. And discussions of herbs to be used for insomnia on the internet do not make a clear distinction between the different types of herbs. They mix in herbs that could cause you damage, along with herbs like chamomile, skullcap, and lemon balm that are very safe and benign. They tend to give the same warnings, which is don't use these if you're using any sedative drug. And again, that warning, while it's certainly true of some of the stronger herbs, isn't true of the nervine-like herbs that we were talking about last week. I was really thrilled to see that this article by Christopher Hobbs puts out safe information about herbs. And he reminds us that when it comes to insomnia or sleep disturbances, there are a lot of causative factors, and that we don't want to run in with an herb any more than we want to run in with a sedative drug. We want to really, as a practitioner or as a person engaged in self-healing, talk about what's happening emotionally. Are you upset? Are you under stress? This, of course, is going to make us more anxious. It's going to disturb our sleep. Saying that we're going to make you sleep by using an herb is not any better than making you sleep by using a drug. We need to have some sense of how we can support you so that you don't need to use the herb the same way you might need to use the drug over and over and over again. Physical changes as we age can cause our sleep pattern to vary. Environmental factors can disrupt our sleep. And he gives a great list here. He says, loss of a loved one, divorce, loud noises, barking dogs, sirens, changing one's work schedule to a night shift, drinking too much coffee, taking amphetamines. All of these things contribute to and intensify insomnia. When I was working with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, we were working very intensely with very high emotions and a lot of people, and for a lot of hours. And I whined to her one day. I said, Elizabeth, I'm not getting enough sleep. I need more sleep. And she looked at me with her glare. It was a wonderful glare. I treasure Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's glare. And she said to me, you don't need to sleep. My mouth gaped open, I'm quite sure, and I looked at her stunned, and I said, Elizabeth, it's like a human need. It's like you need food, you need water, you need shelter, you need sleep. Sleep is like important. We're getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep a night. It's not enough, Elizabeth. She said, of course it's enough. She said, have you ever gone to sleep and woken up more tired than when you went to sleep? And I said, of course, everybody does. She said, well, that means that you're not relaxing even when you're sleeping. She said, what you need is not more sleep, but more relaxation. And she challenged me to find that relaxation in small increments. So when my computer says I'm going to download something, I don't sit there tapping my fingers going, hurry up, hurry up. I close my eyes and sink into relaxation. If I'm playing my favorite computer game, and here's another ad, I don't go, and hold my click finger at the ready. I close my eyes and I drop into a relaxation. If I'm waiting in line at the supermarket, I don't look around to see one more thing I can get. I close my eyes and drop into a deep relaxation. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross changed my life so that I have never since then said, I need more sleep, but only ever said to myself, I need more relaxation. Now, it's certainly true, and the Sleep Institute has just revised for all age ranges the length of time that we should sleep. And they are big fans of a lot of sleep, 8 or even 9 hours of sleep a night. And certainly when we're younger, quite a bit more. They do agree that as we age, we might be getting a little less sleep, although we will notice that people as they age do tend to become nap takers and get in a little more there. But let's not go overboard with ourselves in believing that every single one of us needs the same amount of sleep. And this is, in fact, one of the big changes that the Sleep Institute just made, was to offer a range of healthy amounts of sleep rather than trying to make everybody fit into exactly the same pattern. Christopher Hobbs wants us to know that neurotransmitters are chemicals that allow nerve impulses to travel from one nerve to another, and they include things such as serotonin, acetylcholine, GABA, and even testosterone and estrogen. It has been found that sleep disorders, insomnia, and depression are especially linked to difficulty with these neurotransmitters, and especially the neurotransmitter serotonin. Serotonin is manufactured by the body from the amino acid tryptophan, and herbs and foods high in tryptophan increase the amount of serotonin in the body. Now, serotonin is a fascinating neurotransmitter, and it is one of the neurotransmitters that I find people are able to actually change at will. I know this sounds just absolutely crazy, but I have done it with hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people. One of the basic functions of serotonin is that it makes life livable. What I mean by that is that there's an awful lot of sensory information coming into us at every moment. There are sights, there are sounds, there are odors, there are tastes, there are physical sensations, there is temperature, there is pressure, there is rough, there is smooth. All of this sensory information is coming into us. And serotonin damps it down. It damps it down so that you could possibly be driving a car and listening to me talk. And that serotonin is helping you to distinguish my voice from the noises of the car and the noises on the road and the noises of traffic and perhaps the noises of squabbling children in the back of the automobile that you are driving. Because we are able to use serotonin in that way to focus in on a specific stimuli and let the rest of it kind of go by. We might suspect that men are better at producing serotonin than women, since it's quite the old joke that men are able to walk by things that would disturb a woman, such as a pair of socks on the floor or a big mess, and saying something like, I don't see it, that's a higher serotonin level. LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide 25, specifically targets serotonin production and basically lowers and then stops it for periods of 8 to 10 hours. What happens to the person who has taken LSD then is that all of this sensory information comes into them in a way that can be incredible sensory overload. So that sights start to merge into sounds, and sounds start to have smells, and things that we were able to ignore before, we can't ignore. The whole sensorium, as it were, comes crashing in on us. So what I have people do to experiment with serotonin level is to sit quietly in a place, closing your eyes. We want to block out the sensory stimulus from sight and focusing on the sensory stimulus from sound, and to take a good hear at what's going on around you, and then to tell your brain to make less serotonin. Allow your serotonin level to drop and see what happens. The vast majority of people suddenly hear things that they were not aware was in their environment. Now, if you're going to be doing this in a tightly closed room, it's not going to work. It's better if you're in a room where there's some ambient noise, or even outside, so that you can really start to pick up on the different layers of that. When I'm out walking with a friend, I will often say to her, let's lower our serotonin level and see what we smell, and have that sense of how far away from something can we smell it, how far away from the lawnmower can we get the smell of the mown grass, and the smell of the gasoline, and the smell of the oil, and perhaps even the smell of the human being who's doing that. And after people have experienced that, and most people are quite easily able to lower their serotonin level, I then tell them to raise their serotonin level back to that which is comfortable for them. If you have been taking drugs that change your serotonin level, this is not necessarily so easy. But if you are working with anxiety or sleeplessness, this will be far easier. We'll talk more about serotonin reuptake inhibitors when we talk about depression next month. But for now, we just want to remember that we can change the amount of serotonin in our brain very easily simply by telling our brain to make less or make more, and that we can also use herbs and foods that are high in tryptophan, such as our friend St. John's wort, Hypericum perforatum, the grain quinoa, and, interestingly enough, soy products. I would suspect especially miso and tamari. Not just from Chris Hobbs, but from the Sleep Institute, and just about anybody who is working with sleep, is a list of sleep hygiene topics to consider. And perhaps these may seem too simple, but they're really not. First of all, hide the clock. Hide the clock. Interestingly enough, sleeplessness seems to be connected to looking at the clock over and over again. So hide the clock, but do maintain a regular sleep schedule. If you are at a time in your life when you can go to sleep when you're sleepy and wake up when you wake up, how wonderful, but make that a regular time. Get sleepy at a regular time and wake up at a regular time. If you're not in a time in your life when you're at your leisure to do that, wake up at the same time every day. I know it seems cruel, doesn't it, if you have to get up early for work, that you have to get up early on the weekends. Believe me, if you're having any problem with going to sleep, you need to wake up at the same time. Restrict the amount of sleep you get to the amount you need to feel refreshed. There's actually a chemical that's produced while we sleep that makes us a little bit depressed. That's good. We need to be depressed while we're sleeping. In other words, we need not to want to get up and do things while we're sleeping. But if we oversleep, and you really can oversleep, then you make too much of that chemical and you actually do feel depressed. It's one of the reasons why I don't nap. My body must be really good at making that chemical, because when I wake up from a nap, I just feel like, I think I'll sleep for the next 100 years. Doesn't work for me. All right. Exercise regularly, but don't do it right before going to bed. Turn off the phone. Turn off all the electronics. Get your room dark and quiet. What do you need to do to get the place where you sleep dark and quiet and cool? Cool, cool, cool. Heat is one of the villains in terms of sleep. If you wake up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom and can't go back to sleep, then like the kid who's wetting the bed, cut yourself off on liquids. Except you might want to drink a small cup of a hot, milky beverage like hot chocolate, or we talked about poppy seeds in the hot milk. Anything like that is excellent. If you're having sleep problems, avoid alcohol, tobacco, and caffeinated beverages in the evening. Yeah, I know. You say alcohol helps you fall asleep, and it might, but it really disturbs the architecture of your sleep. I like this sleep hygiene tip. Use the bedroom for sleeping and sex. Those are two good things to use a bed for. Use your bed for sex and for sleeping. Do not watch TV from your bed. Don't work on your report from bed. Have a workspace and a sleep space. If you confuse those two things, your body might get confused. If you find you can't fall asleep, stop with the self-abuse. Don't get angry at yourself. Don't tell yourself, rah, rah, rah. And especially, thank you, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, do not say, I'm going to be really grumpy tomorrow. We were simply not allowed to be really grumpy tomorrow. And anybody who said, I feel grumpy, I didn't get enough sleep, was told, that's because you told yourself you'd be grumpy. Instead, tell yourself you're going to be happy. And if you're interested, you might try meditation or progressive relaxation or massage. to prepare for sleep. I travel a lot, and one of the things that I find is the first time I'm in a new place, I'm a little wary. And so it's not as easy to get to sleep. Progressive relaxation or meditation always seems to really bring that sleepiness to me. All right, let's look at some of these herbs that I said we were going to be looking at. I really wanted to just divide these herbs right up into, here are the herbs that help you with sleep, and here are the herbs that help you with anxiety, but they refused to do that. Nonetheless, we're going to start with the herbs that are most known for bringing sleep, and then talk about the herbs that are good to bring sleep and resolve anxiety, and then talk about a few herbs that are just for anxiety. So let's start with the queen of them all, Papaver somniferum, the opium poppy. The opium poppy is perhaps one of the oldest and the best known of all of the sedative herbs, and of course it creates sedative drugs as well. Opium has been used medically for thousands and thousands of years, and it still provides the world's most powerful painkillers, morphine and codeine, as well as the drug heroin. By the 1600s, alcoholic tincture of opium called laudanum was developed. And over the next couple of hundred years, laudanum was used in virtually every medicine, especially medicines that relieved pain, induced sleep, and calmed the nerves. But laudanum began to be used in virtually every medicine because, like many sedatives, it is addictive. Do not think simply because it's from a plant it's not addictive. Opium is addictive as the drugs that are made from it. And so why not just add a little laudanum to your medicine? People will always come back for more. Eventually, it began to be prescribed for everything from colds to cardiac disease, given to women for relief of menstrual cramps, nerves, and hysteria, given to children for teething pain. It was regularly administered and prescribed by physicians who were very well aware of its addictive nature. It wasn't until the 1800s that we were able to isolate morphine and codeine, and although they were certainly more effective than laudanum, they were looked at as, rightfully so, more dangerous. It wasn't until the Civil War that morphine really came into its own, where it was used extensively. Not surprisingly, by the last part of the 1800s, addiction to morphine was a huge, huge problem. And tuberculosis patients, of course, were prime receivers of laudanum. By the time we got into the early 1900s, the 20th century, the use of morphine, heroin, opium, and laudanum was made illegal in the United States. Today, morphine is used in treating very severe pain. And again, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was very much in favor of morphine. She said, yes, it's addictive, but we were talking about terminal people here. We were talking about people who are dying from a disease. I think we should give them morphine. And her lead has been followed. I'm very glad to see, and people that I've been working with who are terminal or have beloved ones who are terminal, morphine is no longer held back from. Opium contains about 26 different known alkaloids, the most potent of which is morphine. It is possibly the most effective painkiller ever known to medicine. It exerts an effect on the sensory nerve cells of the brain, directly blocking pain messages. It also binds to endorphin receptors in the brain, inducing feelings of euphoria and eliminating all anxiety. But morphine, like the drug sedatives, is highly addictive and fatal in large enough doses, difficult to come off of. The alkaloid papaverine is a alkaloid that is found in both the seeds and the poppy heads, and it blocks nerve impulses without blocking the direct pain message center. So it can act as a milder form. It's especially used to quell bronchial spasms, treat spasms of the stomach, and other kinds of pains. In Greece, opium poppy was called the poppy of Lethe, and Lethe, of course, was the river of forgetfulness, the river of oblivion, because all the souls of the dead who passed into Hades had to drink from its waters so that they would forget about their past lives on earth. Opium poppy is certainly renowned as being one of the most important of the sedative plants. All poppies that you grow in your garden are opium poppies, and so if you're growing poppies in your garden, you could indeed use them. You don't even have to use the latex. Remember, we talked about using a tea, especially brewed up in milk, of the poppy heads with the seeds, or you can go right out to your supermarket and buy poppy seeds there. Poppy seeds are banned in the United Arab Emirates. Find that interesting. And, of course, professional athletes are suggested that they should not eat poppy seed bagels before a game because they might have urine that tests positive. There are several other plants that are like opium poppy, but far more gentle. One of them is called California poppy. The other one is called wild lettuce. Wild lettuce, Lactuca virosa, is said to have effects very similar to opium, although we cannot find anything like morphine or codeine or heroin in the wild lettuce. One of the first people to talk to me about wild lettuce told me that, it was a native person, told me that that's what was used when someone was mauled by a bear or a large cat or had another grievous accident, that wild lettuce sap would be collected, boiled up, and given to that person. And again, the word that was used was so that they would forget their pain. Wild lettuce may be one of the best natural sleep aids available, according to some authors. The latex, or the white sap of the wild lettuce, is incredibly bitter, as is opium, and it is considered to be a nervine. If we look around in stores for formulas for insomnia, you will find that almost every formula includes wild lettuce. It's also used homeopathically, specifically against restlessness and insomnia. Wild lettuce is considered to be so safe that it is safe enough for children. It's actually in many books that talk about ways to help your children if your children are very upset, if your children are teething, if your child is having some real emotional difficulty or is having problems sleeping. Wild lettuce is one of the herbs that is most favored. Wild lettuce is also used homeopathically, Lactuca, against restlessness and insomnia. Again, one of those few places where the homeopaths and the herbalists say, we're going to use this in pretty much the same way. Tincture of wild lettuce is the easiest way to do it. I'm not going to go out there with a razor blade and kind of, cut my wild lettuce and get the sap out of it and collect it as we would do with the opium poppy. Instead, I'm just going to use the stalk of the flowering plant, cut up in pieces, make a tincture of that, and that tincture can be taken by the dropperful for a child. I probably start out with 5 to 10 drops. For an adult, easily a dropperful or 2 as the beginning dosage. guess we're going to have to wait until next week to talk about California poppy. Do you grow California poppy, Gemini?
I don't know, but it's something I need to look into. You've mentioned that a couple times.
It's such a beautiful, beautiful plant. Have you seen it growing?
I think I have. Is it like a reddish flower?
It's orange.
I think I have seen it.
Bright orange. And usually where it's planted, there's like a sweep of it planted. It's not a really tall plant. It's not as tall as poppy. And it is a member of the Papaveraceae family. Oh, we got to go.
All right. Thanks so much, Susan. I appreciate it. And this concludes part 59 of our series, The 7 Medicines, The Wise Woman Way, with Susan Weed at Time Monk Radio.